Hello watch lovers. Now this video is going to be a little different. Often on this channel, we aim to show and inform you about as many watches as possible, because the world of watchmaking is deep and wide, with so many pieces to admire, learn about, and hey, maybe even purchase occasionally if you're lucky. And so sometimes we have to move quickly to fit it all in. Well, we're not doing that today, because today we're talking about just one watch, the Omega Speedmaster. A watch that has lived a life most of us can only dream about. It's been tested to the edges of space, survived moon missions, and yet still is a confidently casual pick for the coffee shop. So buckle up, speed freaks, because we're unpacking one of the greatest watchmaking stories ever told. This is everything you need to know about the Omega Speedmaster. The original Speedmaster appeared in 1957, and it released alongside the Railmaster and the Seamaster 300. But I think if Omega knew what was in store for this now iconic chronograph, it might well have named it the Moonmaster. Alas, NASA hadn't even been founded in 1957, and its first spaceflight was still several years away. And as with most chronographs of the era, the Speedmaster was initially intended for sports timing, specifically motorsports, which were growing in popularity faster than Elvis's waistline. Sorry, too soon. The first generation model, the reference CK2915, was a little bit different to the Speedmaster we know and love today. Although it featured the customary 3-register black dial, it came with a military-style broad arrow handset and a tachymeter scale on a plain steel bezel, unlike the one with an aluminium insert that arrived later. Powering the watch was the Calibre 321. This manually wound movement is found in all the Speedmasters worn by astronauts that made it to the moon. And to this day, no Omega Calibre besides the 321 has graced the lunar surface. The Speedmaster's first trip into space came in October 1962, when a similar watch, the reference CK2998, was worn by NASA astronaut Wally Schirra, as he orbited the Earth in the one-man Sigma 7 spacecraft as part of the Mercury Atlas 8 mission. Unfortunately, as this was 2 years before NASA's official adoption of the Speedmaster, Schirra didn't get a freebie from his employer and had to buy the watch with his own hard-earned money. A few years later, in 1965, after surviving a barrage of brutal tests that made Navy SEALs selection training look like a sports day for frail old people, the Speedmaster was selected by NASA as its official timepiece, beating out chronographs from the likes of Rolex and Longines. And that same year saw the Speedmaster embark on its first official NASA mission. This was the Gemini 3 spaceflight, the first mission involving more than one astronaut. And then, months later, Ed White made history when he became the first American to perform a spacewalk with his trusty Speedmaster proving up to the task. And yet, the event that would anoint the Speedmaster with legend status came in 1969, when it was worn by the crew of Apollo 11 on its moon mission. And when they got up there, Neil Armstrong left his Speedmaster behind in the landing module as backup, and so it was down to Buzz Aldrin to ensure that Omega would have the ultimate bragging rights over its watchmaking rivals for years to come. But the greatest test of the Speedmaster's dependability in space was still yet to come. During the Apollo 13 mission of 1970, an exploding oxygen tank threatened the lives of the 3-man crew who were en route to the moon. Forced to abort their mission and conserve energy, they switched off their digital timers, leaving them to rely solely on their wristwatches. To ensure their spacecraft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere at the correct angle, an exact 14-second burn of fuel was needed. This was timed by Jack Swigart's Speedmaster, while his colleague, James Lovell, used the Earth's horizon to safely guide the craft to splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. As gratitude, NASA awarded Omega its Silver Snoopy Award, one of the highest honours within the organisation. And if you're wondering what Charles Schulz's plucky cartoon beagle has to do with space travel, it's because NASA was keen to adopt a symbol that the US public could identify with. And everyone loves Snoopy, don't they? Thus, from 1968, a Snoopy pin badge was awarded by the astronauts to outstanding NASA employees and contractors. And there are now several silver Snoopy versions of the Omega Speedmaster, and each one is highly sought after by Omega devotees. Over the years, many Speedmasters have come to be known as Moonwatches, but in reality, few of these would meet NASA's stringent demands. A true Moonwatch, one capable of surviving NASA's tests, must tick a few vital boxes. These include a Hesselite crystal, rather than a sapphire one, as it's less prone to shattering. No astronaut wants his spacesuit punctured by a glass splinter, or indeed to bite down on one that's landed on their freeze-dried space sausage. And there can be no glass in the caseback either, which must be plain steel. For anyone seeking a Speedmaster Moonwatch today, the variations are endless. We're talking dozens of limited editions celebrating various anniversaries, from moon landings to Ed White's spacewalk, as well as Snoopy models and fancy precious metal versions for the more affluent wannabe astronaut. Indeed, there might be more variations of the Moonwatch these days than there are actual craters on the moon. Compare the 1957 Speedmaster with the contemporary model equipped with the latest 3861 movement, and you'll find that they are recognisably the same watch. The dial layout has never changed, with the chronograph registers staying in the same positions. And the only thing that's significantly different about the baton hour markers is the lume, which used to be tritium but is now superluminova. Meanwhile, pencil-style hands have long replaced the broad arrow and alpha hands found in early generation models. For the mavericks who love the Speedmaster but hate conformity, you can now get an all-white dial version, as debuted by Daniel Craig earlier this year. If proof was needed that the actor's time as Bond is over, it's photos of him wearing a Speedmaster and not the Seamaster he's been contractually handcuffed to since Casino Royale. What a trooper. That must have been tough. As for the case, the original Speedmaster was a modest 39mm, but the Moonwatch has been a consistent 42mm for decades now. And while there has been some changes in dimension and shape, it's been so subtle that you really need to look at the different versions side by side to even notice. Unlike some modern versions of vintage chronographs, the Moonwatch has retained its retro-style mushroom pushers, while on the caseback you'll find everything from engravings to Snoopy animations. The water resistance is 50 metres, which, if you think about it, is more than adequate for a watch that's mostly famous for being worn in a place with less diving opportunities than the Gobi Desert. The Sea of Tranquility is a really misleading name. And then over the decades, Omega has incrementally improved the bracelet on the Moonwatch, and it's now better than ever. What started off as a jingly-jangly 3-link bracelet with flat links is now more rounded, with a reassuringly solid feel on the wrist. Better still, the latest version that comes with this standard Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch features an easy adjustment clasp for the perfect fit. Of course, if you really want to adopt the astronaut look, you'll put it on a Velcro strap and wear it over the sleeves of your puffer jacket. In 1968, Omega began to fit Speedmasters with the Calibre 861 instead of the 321. This movement did away with the column wheel control of the chronograph and replaced it with the less traditional cam-actuated version. And it's a descendant of this movement, the 3861, that is found in the latest Speedmaster Moonwatches. While unlike the 321, the 3861 doesn't have any moon landing bragging rights, but it more than makes up for it by boasting George Daniels' coaxial escapement, which can now be found in most modern Omegas. It's also certified as a chronometer by COSC before being cased and tested again by METAS. This ensures that the accuracy is guaranteed to be between +0 and +5 seconds per day on average. The movement's also plated with Omega's Moonshine Gold. It's paler than standard yellow gold and is amagnetic to 15,000 Gauss, which comfortably trumps the Rolex Milgauss, which might be why Rolex deleted it. As for the Calibre 321, this made a welcome reappearance a few years ago when Omega faithfully reproduced it and used it in a replica of the Speedmaster worn by Ed White on his spacewalk and Gene Cernan on the last ever moonwalk in 1972. The moon's surface has since remained untouched by human footprints, with no missions planned until 2026 at the earliest. So, when it comes to great value, it's hard to knock the standard $7,500 Moonwatch, especially when compared to other iconic chronographs. At £13,200, a steel Rolex Daytona is almost twice the price, and you'll pay a good chunk more for any Zenith chronograph. But you'll find Tag Heuer chronograph collections, be it the Monaco or the Carrera, far more in line with Moonwatch prices. That said, all these watches have automatic movements, while the Speedmaster Moonwatch is famously powered by the manual wind variety. And Moonwatch fans are the kind of people who love to engage with their watch, giving it the kind of attention normally reserved for their pet cat or a Tamagotchi, or maybe even an excellent succulent. Because winding the crown every few days to power it up is always a pleasure and never a chore. And the Moonwatch is one of the few contemporary luxury chronographs to use a manually wound movement, at least in this price range. As a decent alternative, you could plump for Breitling's Premier Heritage with its B09 manual wind caliber, which you can buy for around the same price as the Speedmaster. Beyond that, prepare to enter the world of Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin and Erlanger & Zoner. Oof. Meanwhile, at the lower end of the price spectrum are independent micro brands like Nevada Grenshin and Man, which tend to use manual wind Solita chronograph movements due to the last manual wind ETA chronographs, the 7750 and 7760, being phased out years ago. This is all well and good, but none of the above has ever been to the moon. Nor do they feature Omega's genius coaxial escapement, reducing all that friction and lessening the need to send your watch off to the boffins at the service centre every few years. All of which makes the Moonwatch seem more appealing than ever. So there you have it. There are very few other watches out there that can boast what the Omega Speedmaster can. Iconic style, innovative engineering, and a storied history involving various trips to the moon. It's why the Speedmaster has been consistently popular for nearly 70 years and arguably one of the greatest watches ever made. But what do you think? Is the Omega Speedmaster the best ever wristwatch around? Let me know in the comments below, and if you would like an Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch of your very own, or indeed any other luxury watch, then why not head over to watchfinder.com, where you'll find hundreds of pre-owned luxury watches. Check it out, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.